Hello and welcome. So I passed the first test. I'm not currently speaking on mute, I believe, which is always a good start to the proceedings. My pleasure today to bring you Tales from the Front Line. We have a real stellar guest with us this show. Andy Shapcott, who I'll introduce very shortly, is someone I've known for a while. A real pioneer in the banking space from an automation perspective, and it's my absolute pleasure to be able to welcome him to today's webinar. I'm sure the listeners are going to get a lot out of this. I've spent quite a lot of time with Andy in and around the operation, and it is absolutely fantastic to witness actually the work that he and the wider team have managed to accomplish at Lloyds Banking Group. So thank you, Andy, for joining us.
Hi, no problem at all. Good to be here.
Excellent. And let me just figure out now how we move on to the agenda. It's a quick one, guys. You'll be pleased to hear on the agenda. Introductions, which obviously is something that we are doing now. Then I'm going to hand over the mic to Andy. Really want Andy to kind of bring to life the work that he's spent doing at Lloyds over the last 5 years, although I know you've been there a little while longer, mate. And then we'll get into Q&A. Now, this really should be an interactive session. So please don't just let me ask Andy all the questions. We spoke backstage. He wants your gnarliest, most difficult questions that you can possibly imagine firing at him. So he doesn't really. But please do feel free to fire those questions in. I'll try and answer, or get Andy to answer as many of those as possible. So that's certainly something to bear in mind as you hear the great work that Andy will have been doing. Now, just for everyone's benefit, we have a slight issue with the slides right now. So I'm going to continue to keep talking, but we may as well do a bit of an intro. Let me ask Andy to introduce himself with kind of his background, just to set the scene on what you've been doing at LBG and why your experience is going to be so relevant to many of our financial service clients on the line.
Thanks, Wayne. So yeah, I've been at Lloyds for nearly 19 years. And the last 5 years of that, I've been working in intelligent automation, but my background was all across different areas of the bank, whether that was contact centers, the branch network, customer services, and group operations. And then just before coming into intelligent automation, I worked in doing journey redesign work and systems thinking work. So since the start of 2017, I've been involved in what we would describe as intelligent automation, which covers a wide range of things. And we've been building that and we developed and started that from scratch to where it is now, which is an enterprise-wide solution, which is used across the bank and gives us a great opportunity really to leverage some of that capability.
Fantastic. Well, as we haven't got the slides yet, maybe let's get into a few more of the questions, and then what we can do is we can bring it back to life with some of your content. So you mentioned there kind of 5 years, so it probably seems quite a long way away. We're talking here about 2016, 2017. So for many on the line, I'm sure that is seen as very early. What was it really, at the time at least, that kind of got you guys interested? Like, what was the goal at 2016 to 2017 to take advantage of this type of technology?
Yeah, so around 2017, we were doing some work. Oh, and I can seamlessly go into some slides. This is brilliant. So 2017, we were doing some work around kind of end-to-end journey mapping, systems thinking, customer journey redesign work, and some of the technologies that were coming out then and were available and I'd seen deployed really helped in terms of improving customer end-to-end journey times, helping colleagues, and that gave us the impetus to start looking at it for the bank. And we were at the start of a strategic review period. So we had a goal at the start of 2017 to create some capability across some key areas that we saw as being strategically important to the group over the next period of time, and that we wanted to be really good in. And those are on the screen there. So as you kind of go across the intelligent automation capability, and lots of people use intelligent automation in different ways. So I thought I'd just spend 2 minutes on the first slide talking through what our capability was being built out to achieve. So top right, you've got robotic process automation. Everyone will know that in terms of what it's about, in terms of kind of simplifying and kind of automating repeatable tasks. So we started building out RPA. We then also developed and started developing virtual assistants and chatbot capability, which we built our own platform using IBM Watson. And then as you go into the left-hand side, intelligent products is the latest one that we've been developing, which is how we turn data or unstructured data from either speech files or scanned documents into usable data, which is starting to drive some real improvements now. And then in the bottom left-hand corner is probably the first thing that we came up with, which was our digital products, and how we use that capability to take documents in scanned from customers and businesses and then send them securely as well. During the period of time of developing these, we also developed a machine learning platform, which allowed us to build data science and machine learning models safely and securely connected into the back end capability. And the reason it's not on there now is that as I changed role and went in to run the wider digital platforms and some of the change onto our internet and online bank, we decided that the best place for that was alongside what we do with our development of data. So we built it, it was being used and scaled, and then we took it and said, right, okay, let's put it closer to that data team in terms of how we take that forward. So around those capabilities, the goal at the start was very clear. For each of them, we wanted to develop in-house capability. We wanted to develop a scalable infrastructure. We wanted to have really tight controls and governance around it, so it was used in the right way. And then the critical thing for me was that we also wanted to be able to demonstrate use cases that were driving real value to the business. So once we demonstrated those and could be confirmed as having those 4 things signed up and completed, then we could use it more widely across the group. Until then, we were narrow on some use cases. And to give you an example of that, our first use case, which is beautifully pictured on the next slide, is where we started out in terms of it was literally a standalone laptop in a room in Glasgow, and everyone in the business was very nervous about what we might be doing with RPA or robotics, and everyone had a different view on it. So this literally was, there might be a little bit of creative narrative on the photo, but this really was what it was like with our first bot. It was looking at payments in error that were coming through. We built it, we deployed it onto a laptop, and it was sat in a room in Glasgow that had a secure 6-digit code to enter the room, and it had a kind of uninterrupted power supply, because everyone was very kind of precious about how we would start that journey and actually control it. So that was our first bot, and then from there we started to get more confidence from the business in terms of how we took that forward. And the next one is then the next slide as we flow in shows how we started to scale those. Once we'd got through the kind of core components of how do we build it and check it's all safe to be used, and we got more and more confidence from the business, and we could then see the scale of the growth. So this slide talks about our adoption rates, and you can see that RPA was the first one that really went kind of viral in terms of how we started developing that. And lots of that was driven by the model we implemented, where we had a centre of excellence that was accountable for how the platform run and the security of the platform. And then we had a federated approach to developers being in each of the business areas, starting to build and develop the automations that they saw key. So we had a kind of entrance to that, a gateway process, to make sure it was being built in the right way, into the right standards. But they really started alongside looking at their end-to-end journeys, what they wanted to do in terms of automation. The digital products went through really well in terms of starting to increase, and you can see the size and scale of those. And then the virtual assistants don't look as though they've grown as quickly, but some of those are major scale. So, one deployment for us on virtual assistants will be on our mobile app across all the brands that are Lloyds. And that's probably doing somewhere in the region of 9,000 chats a day, to give you an idea of scale. So you can see that one deployment versus a small scale RPA process probably doesn't give a great comparison, but all of those are now delivering scale. And the last one that you start seeing come through is the intelligent products. And that's really because it was the last one that we kind of confirmed that we were doing. But that's doing some really, really interesting stuff now as we take it forward. And the power for me is of having all of this capabilities, then how you join it together when you need to take it forward, because they're all great on their own and they're all delivering value on their own. But the next step, once we'd started really taking a leap of faith in terms of the capability, was how are we going to join these things together, and what would give us that kind of next step. And I get asked a question a lot is, what was the impact of the pandemic and COVID-19 on you creating intelligent automation capability? And lots of people talk about, in times of adversity, things come to the forefront. And for me, it was like putting a magnifying glass on our capability and really looking at it intently around each of the business areas and trying to understand, wow, have we got now what it takes to really help through the pandemic? And the answer was yes, and we did some great things through the pandemic. So on the next slide, you'll see one of those journeys, which was what we did for all of the requests for payment holidays on mortgages. So obviously there was a lot of customers that were concerned about what would be happening with their income and salary. So we created straight away, and I think from memory, it took us about 2 to 3 days. We created an online form. We built an automation then to take the detail from that online form into the back end to check whether people were eligible for a payment holiday and whether we could support that. And then all of that process then got automated through. So fulfillment, and then even now as we come up to the end of people's kind of payment holidays, is it sends a reminder, and that's automated as well through a text. And that, as you can see on that slide, standalone saved in the region of 350 FTEs worth of work, just in terms of what we would have needed to have been done to kind of deliver that. And alongside this, although there's not a slide in here, our ability to build an automation for bounce back loans was probably just as important. And you've probably all heard of bounce back loans, but they're critical to businesses to help them in the early days of the pandemic. And we built an automation, took about 8 to 10 days. And again, that managed all of the front to back process for bounce back loans. And we're really proud that when Which reviewed, feedback and did a kind of how positive do you rate your experience with your bank on getting bounce back loans, we came out top in the financial services sector with an 81% net positive score, all done through automation. And again, we'd have probably needed in the region of 400 people working full time on that to try and fulfill what was needed at the time. So, like I say, out of adversity, something for us proved we could do things. We linked those capabilities together, and that really made a great step change for us. So I'm going to come on to my final slide, which just kind of lifts out some of the lessons and things that I would say are absolutely vital in terms of an automation journey, whether you're starting out or whether you're halfway through that journey and starting to evolve it. So look, I always say up front, be clear on the problems or the things you're trying to create, and then look at where automation can be used. It's very dangerous when you have a hammer because everything looks like a nail. And I really, there was lots of debate in the business about how quickly things could be automated. And I was going, look, let's have a look at end-to-end journeys. Let's look where you want to use the automation or what you're trying to solve, and use it in the right place. Second one is be clear on what IA can and can't do. There are lots and lots of myths out there. There are lots of people that really probably over-egg some of the capability that's out there, which means expectations can be really high. And lots of things like, it'll be a 24/7 service and all these kind of things. Well, it won't, because you're going to have some downtime, or the systems you interact with are going to have downtimes. The excitement factor on automation drives a very weird scenario for me. So, everyone gets excited. And then when you've done the build, which is not the major part of the challenge, the running of it is, and the scaling of it is. And that's where I think 20% of your challenge is building your first automations. 80% of it is running it smoothly, scaling it smoothly. There will definitely be potholes in the road as you go on this journey where things fail, fall over, and keeping the confidence of the business when those problems happen is vital. So, don't underestimate how hard it is running scaled solutions. Communities are really important. Communities of practice, gaining that across the business, and then bringing your risk community with you, even more importantly, is vital. They're on a learning curve as well. In most cases, they haven't got a background in automation, so they need to learn about it. They'll ask you loads of questions. They were sat next to me for most of the journey as we went through it, and we've been audited and checked more times than I've probably had hot dinners, which is good from my perspective. And then down the right-hand side, some other quick things to finish off. So develop your IT for scale. Don't try and put something in and then scale it after. They are big solutions that sometimes are data hungry or, require a lot to make them run smoothly. So make sure you're setting up for success. We were really pleased with our partners. We had no knowledge as we started out this journey, apart from what you could read and pick up. We picked a couple of partners for specific things. They were excellent for us, and did a cracking job. And they were very clear that they were leaving at the end of developing our capability. So it wasn't a partnership for life. This was for a shortest period of time possible, and success was getting us up to speed on being able to run it. And then you can see the other bits around SME support. Change management is critical because your systems you're interacting with, it is a change management process. So those systems may not be able to take what you're interacting onto them with. So be careful on that. Target operating model speaks for itself. And the final thing I would say is on RPA and some of the other capabilities, people get excited that you're going to run them like an IT platform, and they're not. What you created with RPA is a digital workforce in my mind. And if you've got an onshore and offshore workforce, they're probably creating about 16% shrinkage with holidays and sickness. RPA will give you about 3%. So if you talk about it in that way, in my mind, you've got an onshore, offshore workforce, and then a digital workforce. And that's how you should be treating it as you go through. So look, I said I'd be about 15 minutes away, and I've probably overrun slightly, but that would be my kind of summary as I went through our journey and where we're at now in terms of that scale capability.
Fantastic. And so many questions actually that I kind of want to dive into. I'm trying to think about the best way of thinking about these. Just give us an idea on scale at the moment. That's probably a good thing. So I know we've spoken about in your table the kind of volumes there, but about the scale across the bank. I think you call them hubs, right?
Yeah. So we've got it varies slightly across the capabilities, because so for something like RPA, we've got 12 business hubs across the group, whether that's in business banking, retail, different areas of the group building their own backlogs. And you saw the the kind of numbers there, I think we've got about another 50 processes already in pipeline going through, and then we've got others we're creating. That's generating on a day-to-day basis. That's probably giving us somewhere around 500 FTEs worth of benefit per day, or capacity generation, as we'd call it. And since it came in, we've done over 2.5 million hours of capacity generation. And some of those are big one-off pieces of work, which I love, because you switch it on for a period of time, solve the problem, switch it off. Thanks very much. It's the simplest model. On virtual assistants, because we've got less, we do have a team that do the conversation design in somewhere like retail, but that isn't broken down into smaller teams. It's a larger team because it's a bigger deployment. So it just varies. And then on some of the digital products, that's all centralized because it's a straightforward connecting and use, and we support that. So that gives you a rough idea. We've got 70 developers across those RPA hubs, to give you a kind of scale on the developer side as well.
Mm-hmm. So in all of our conversations, we have never spoke about citizen developer. Yet it is a huge conversation and topic in and across the wider industry. I was in New Orleans last week, was it? Again, hosted a workshop on citizen developer, the pros, the cons. And there's a number of banks within that workshop. And what they were talking about was citizen developer. And it got me thinking, and some of them may actually be on today's show, by the way, because although you would never call the 70 developers citizen developers, in theory, you have a federated model, which you've created, a very successful federated model. And there's a number of reasons why I think it's successful. But the fact that 5 years down the line, you still have 50 processes in your pipeline tells me that you've nailed it, right? You haven't hit this ceiling, right? You've still got another 50, and I'm sure there's a lot more based on some of our conversations, and that's just for RPA. So you wouldn't call it citizen developer. Others might look outwards and look in and say that's like a citizen developer program. Kind of talk to us a little bit about that. What is the governance around the hubs, the central, the centralization? How does all that work? How have you got that to stick? How have you got it to work? Because that's what people struggle with.
Yeah. So in terms of how we've got it to stick, I think we've tried to make it as simple for the business areas to focus on what is going to drive value. So I'm not targeted centrally for any capacity creation. I'm not targeted to go and roll it out widely, because RPA is one solution. So is replatforming, straight through processing, all of those kind of things, which are probably in reality a better IT solution, but they don't always happen. So what we created was a kind of gateway process that makes sure we're looking at, is it the right solution? Is there anything coming down the pipeline that's going to replace it within its kind of life cycle that we should therefore leave? So there were some processes that we looked at that looked really easy to automate, but actually we knew there was a replatforming or a large scale IT piece of work coming through the pipeline. So we stopped them and said, don't do it. Focus on something else. We'd seen that. And then we've been very clear on where the accountability for what we do sits. So I have a clear accountability for how the platform runs and the platform uptime. So that's the kind of central, we use Blue Prism. It's the central platform and capability that we've got there. And then the federated areas, if one of the digital workforce needs retraining, then we'll do that retrain. They do that retraining, and they're accountable for that. So it's in their own, it's their benefit of getting the robot back up and running quickly, because however good your change model is, you will definitely experience downtime because something will change, a pop-up will appear or something on a source system. So by having that really clear in who's accountable for what, and therefore they can control their own destiny on how quickly they want to go and develop the kind of RPA sources and processes, then it's worked really well, because I'm never telling them to go faster, quicker. All I would say is when it breaks, I have a team of technical specialists that we've built up over a period of time that can go in and help. So that operating model's worked, and we have found some incredible people in the business that have got an interest in this, whether they're ex-system thinkers that have done end-to-end journey and have picked up the technology, or whether they're more technical based but want to move into something different. We have found, I would say 90% of the people we've got developing are internal people that we've either found that have got an amazing skill, that have been sat taking phone calls or working somewhere in group operations, or have worked with me in the past on some of the journey redesign stuff and have just picked it up brilliantly, and they have a passion for it. I'm very lucky. I've got a great team, and they want to make it work to the best of its ability. So, but whether that's citizen developer, I hear lots about it. What we've got is an internal group of people that are developing through, and very rarely do we go to the external market, apart from for some deep technical knowledge, which occasionally we need in the centre.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. I'm going to keep picking at this particular point, because one of the other things that came out of that workshop last week was, how do you find these people? So I don't know whether you've got any hints about how you find them. Did you have selection process? Like, how did you even let these people know that there was an opportunity to join the team? Like, what was your comms plan? And anything around that, any nuggets that have enabled you to bring in your own words, 70 exceptional people? So that would be really useful, I'm sure, for those who are struggling, not necessarily to find people, but to find good people within their organization that are delivering.
Yeah. Look, the one upside of a big organization like us is there are plenty of people that are either university students, IT people that enjoy work, that are working within your operation somewhere. So really it's trying to unlock and find those people. And it's amazing, once you start the story of what you're doing, you'll get asked lots of questions. So we were doing road shows, we were out talking to people, and we'd always overemphasize the fact that it's not an IT role. It's about looking at a customer journey and then using technology in the right way to help. So RPA, I think, is a great story. It's more difficult on some of the other technologies. There's parts of virtual assistants that are good to do that. So conversational designers we've managed to find, but back end on what we call our chatbot as a service platform is harder. But you go out there and start telling that story, and you get people, and they will talk and say, I used to be taking telephone calls in Sheffield contact centre, and now I'm building robots, and it's out of an interest, and you see them have an aptitude. So in the early days, we were probably, I don't know, about 60-40 on how good we were on identifying people. And you'd bring them in and we'd let them start building a bot alongside one of our partners, and you'd see them struggling, and they just didn't, for everything, they didn't have the aptitude just to do it. So we'd second them out of the business, they'd go back into the business. As we started then understanding more about what was required, you can talk more clearly at an open day, you can talk more clearly when you're demonstrating the skills required, and do that. And then part of our challenge was making sure that the people in my team that were going to train the developers were the right people. And one of those is still with me today, ex-training colleague, and he did his Blue Prism developer course, did all of that, can build robots, but actually he is a excellent trainer and will go out and train people on how to build bots, and he'll know how they're doing as they go through that. So we've got in-house training capability, we've got online training capability now that's ours and been developed by the training team. And it's so good they even let me have a go, and I did do a little build. So, I always try and practice what I preach. It wasn't the best robot we've ever built or the best RPA solution, but it did work. But yeah, once you create that, and then you see people coming through their training, and you see them, then we supported them in doing some of their qualifications in it as well. So if they wanted to, they could become a qualified developer. Then I think you build that momentum. But the success story, Wayne, helps so much, because when something's going really well and it's getting lots of coverage in the group, then suddenly you get more and more people wanting to be involved, and you will find them in big organizations. Externally, a bit more tricky. It's a challenging market, but we have brought in people to help out from a technical aspect.
Excellent. Okay, loads of good insight there. I guess we've spoken more about RPA, but actually, one of the reasons why I think your deployment, shall we say, of automation capability is so special is that you never stopped at RPA, and actually you quickly realize that we are not going to transform our business if all we are automating is what I call handwork, right? The clickety-click, if you were Kieran Gilmurray, the moving of data from one place to another, the swivel chair, there's many terms for this type of work. You realize that you've done something about it. You spoke a little bit about some of those individual capabilities, which is great. Keeping on the lines of the people, how many of the people that started with RPA are able to pick up some of these other technologies? I'm trying to think about, we found people in the business who can do RPA.
Yeah.
I think you mentioned we found people in the business who can do some of the conversational AI design, which is, again, would really make sense. How many of your RPA developers in the hubs? So, for others, they might be classed as citizen developers. How many of those are kind of trying their hand at different things, just trying to get a feel for that for other organizations to understand?
So less from the hubs. We've had some great examples of people coming in, and we're trying to build it now so that we can see some career steps as well. So one of the things we try and build in is you might be a developer, and then you might go into being a technical lead, so supporting a range of hubs, and that gives some career progression opportunities through the RPA route. But we've also seen some people that started out in RPA, did a great job in RPA, got a passion for what we'd set up as a team in terms of intelligent automation, and then have gone on to start learning data science, machine learning, modeling. And we've got two great ladies that have come through RPA, moved into data science. Unfortunately, we've lost one of them to an external. Great career for her. But they are starting to come through, and we've seen some product owners switch across from RPA into virtual assistants because they've kind of got the knowledge of what we're trying to do on IA, and therefore they can switch into those. At the kind of very technical point, we don't see a lot of swapping between the RPA technical support team and the virtual assistant support team, or the digital or model maker support team. But kind of engineering leads, POs, we do see movement, and that keeps everyone fresh and keeps them up to speed on different things that are being developed. And it also, one of the biggest things is it then allows them to look at what's being built over here, what can be reused. And when we're talking to the business areas, they suddenly go, well, actually, it might not be this solution you need, but it could be a bit of this and it could be a bit of that. So certainly we keep everyone up to speed on all of the capabilities that we've created, so they can talk about them and have knowledge about them, but less technical movement.
Cool. Two questions. I don't know whether you're okay answering the first one. Just overall number of people kind of within intelligent automation broadly. I just want to give people an idea of the scale, because we're not talking about, we already spoke about 50, 60 developers in RPA alone, right? So we know we're into the high double figures. But actually, I just want to give people a sense of scale, because you're talking about moving roles and POs and product owners, engineers. So there's a wide skill set, right? From technical setup, trainers. I mean, this is, when we talk about a scaled operation, we're not talking about a 10-person COE out of London here. We are talking about scale across the business with highly trained, skilled people. So again, this is why it's not necessarily citizen developer, right? So this is beyond that, but it has many of the same characteristics. So, we're somewhere 100 to 200 people in that type of ballpark, aren't we? I think.
Yeah. You're somewhere around that, and the reason I wouldn't be any surer is it depends how you look at your kind of 24/7 incident support and all of that kind of thing. So if you think that these things are running 24/7, although aren't up all of that time, then you have a first line support team that are there to manage incidents and make sure that we're reacting as quickly as possible to downtime. And then you've got a range of people across my central team looking at the technical support, and that will fluctuate. So um, different times, if we're building out new capability or we're just running what we've got, then you might see a new feature team turn up and upscale that. So you're somewhere in that 100 to 200. The bit I would say though, Wayne, is that's because we're scaling and we've created something that's really enterprise large size. I think if you were looking now and I was starting a small business, we're speaking to some businesses that bank with us that we're trying to help in terms of what they might want to do on automation. There are options where you can go smaller scale, use a SaaS provider to help you out, and actually you could gain some really good benefit from automation without creating the size and scale that we have. So I think there's a bit of horses for courses really in terms of what is it you're trying to achieve, and that's why I'd come back to that. What do you want to build here, and how long do you want it to be around for, and how much do you want it to do, versus if you want to go properly, you could still do a small scale or an outsourced kind of offer. They're out there in the market if you don't want to set up this kind of scale we have.
Okay, last question, I think, on people then. And you almost touched upon it actually with the ML and the data science lady that left, but retention of your staff, right? So you now have highly skilled people who've been in and around the organization for a while. Like, have you got any special things that you do around retention? Like, what is it that makes people stick around in the LPG automation? And I kind of think I already know what it is. I'm sure it's going to be variety. There's a variety of roles. There's a variety of technologies. So you're keeping people interested, right? The people who started 5 years ago are probably not doing the same thing that they are doing now, and that's, I guess, one of the lessons learned. But is there anything in particular you think makes working with you and the team particularly sticky that other people should kind of keep as in the back of their mind when they're setting their own up? Because we're in a very competitive jobs market right now, especially around highly skilled people across intelligent automation. So you have to do something. I'm just wondering if there's any kind of hints and tips that you guys or have deployed that might be nuggets for everybody listening.
So the first thing I'd say is where you source them from. So, if you source internally and people have had a career with Lloyds already, they see it as part of the evolution of their careers. So that helps with all the benefits, everything that Lloyds has as a large employer. You've just given them something new because you're investing in them and training them. So, I've got people working in RPA that have been with the bank 35 years, and for the last 5 years have been doing automation, and for 30 years they may have been working in group operations, different areas. So lots of people see it as a kind of new up and coming trendy capability, but actually for lots of people that have worked around, they're the kind of people that if you bring them through as well, they're highly unlikely to leave Lloyds. They're highly unlikely to leave the business. So there's a connection, there's a natural kind of work that they've been doing for years. So that would be the first thing, where you source them from. If you source them in on a big salary and then they get offered another one, you're probably going to lose those type of people anyway. So sourcing up front would be a big one for me. And then I think how you keep developing them and balance the working on new stuff with having to do some of the stuff which is keep the stuff we've got running and alive and working it really well. But we invariably try and get people developing new skill while they're with us, working on something new. And it sounds corny, but you make it a really great place to work where they feel invested in, they're part of a bigger piece within the group, and hopefully they stay. We don't have massive turnover across the automation capability. That we probably see more in the data science world than we do in automation, even though it is a highly competitive market. So source properly from the right places, invest in them then in their learning and development. And that what I would then say is, if you do lose some, you've invested in them, you've done the right thing, everyone else in your business sees that you're doing the right thing and you're investing in people. So your pipeline from coming in then from the rest of your business will still come flowing through, because they'll want to work in that team and they'll want to pull through. So you create your own kind of story in my mind around how those people and individuals come through.
Excellent. Okay, well, we will move on from people. I guess I want to start thinking about the technology. I'm going to call it the tipping point, when in your journey you realized that RPA was not the panacea to all of your transformation needs, and you realized that there were other capabilities that you needed to kind of bring into your digital workforce. Like, what was the tipping point? Talk to us a little bit about that journey, and kind of bring to life some of your experiences around, moving from RPA to a suite of capabilities, at least from a strategy perspective. And then maybe let's talk about how that then transpires in operations, because you've built this catalyst, you've built this foundation that's incredibly strong, enterprise ready, enterprise wide RPA, and now you're bringing new stuff into the mix. And this is, clearly an area where people are at varying different stages of their own journey. So it'd be really great to kind of get some of your thoughts on, looking back, what did you do?
Yeah, and so I think at the start we were very clear on what we wanted to build. So we almost put the stake in the ground of, these are the 4 areas of capability that we want, and we want to have them fully driving value, and we want them in our business, scalable, enterprise-wide solution for everyone to consume. So that drove us to be clear on finding the 4 capabilities, going into whoever our sourcing was, whether that was Blue Prism for RPA or whether it was IBM Watson for some of the chat. So we said, right, that's the 4 biggies. Now, by pushing there and not getting too distracted, it allowed us to get those to a scalable situation over that period of time, drive value, get good credibility in the business. Well, that's probably caused us, and hindsight's a great thing, is we're now in a bit of catch up on some of the other bits where we parked them early on, because we were focused on those. So, you and I, Wayne, talk a lot about process mining and task mining. So everyone says to me, oh, have you got process mining and task mining? No, we haven't. And we looked at it early on when we were focused on building the other capability. And as it was 4 years ago, we were like, yeah, I can see the value, but it's not going to trigger now. So I think wherever you are in the journey, it's be clear on what you want to achieve with the technology, and then be wary that at some point you're going to start bringing other things in. So we're doing that now with things like RPA Supervisor, with Service Assist, looking at process mining, task mining capability. So I think you always evolve. On virtual assistants, we're now going into back-end fulfillment, where our containment rates are probably as good as they're going to get without fulfilling at the back end. We're looking at how we're going to use that and flow into that. So I think the brilliant thing about this technology is, once you've got it, you can start evolving it. And there are offers now and products out there that, if I was starting on my journey now rather than when we started 4 years ago, I'd go, oh, I'd take all of that. So one of the challenges I have now is, someone will talk to me as a supplier and I'll go, I've got 60% of that. Can you do a little bit of that? And they go, no, it's all or nothing for some of them. And for me, that's more of a challenge now, because I've got lots of it. I need the kind of add-ons that I can bolt on and develop what we've got. So that's the kind of technology parts now. But the other thing is, once you're in using some technology, it's very hard to change it. So again, people get excited about, should I move between one RPA supplier or not? Once you're there, I can't see a reason that I'd swap out of where I am now, because it's not very easy when you've got lots of processes in there. So make sure you do that homework up front about who you want to partner with.
Excellent. No, good, solid advice there, and obviously even more impressive that you were thinking about that back in 2016, 2017. So, and again, I guess it's that's what you were imagining when you were building out this scale. We weren't building it out thinking this is an RPA platform per se. We were thinking these are the capabilities that we will need for these reasons. And yes, we might start with RPA, but actually we know that this is just one of the many tools in our toolkit that we will need in our transformation. So that's fantastic.
And Wayne, I think the other bit I would say is the community, the intelligent automation community across whatever industry you're working in, is incredibly helpful. And I didn't realize that straight away at the start. And, that's how I met you at one of those meetings when years back, and lots of other people that have been brilliant to just talk to, see what they've done, who they're using, what that's driving. The big thing for me is I learned how honest that community is, of people that are practicing and are willing to share their knowledge and experience. And if you want to do a reference visit, then most people will go, of course, pop in, we'll talk you through what we've done. And whether they're the best or not the best, you learn so much, and people are immensely helpful. So don't be shy about reaching out to people and just saying, can you tell me how you did this or why you picked them? Because they will share a wealth of knowledge that you will know you gain through scars and pain points sometimes. And if you can help people in this community, we'll definitely do that.
Yeah, no, I think it's a really great point. I mean, there are some fantastic people, yourself included, and anyone who is interested in a reference visit. You just got the invite there from Andy. It's getting closer to Christmas. Things are quieting down. Clearly for Andy, he's got loads of time. So, try and get it in the next few days. But in all seriousness, he's right. There is an amazing community. There are a lot of lessons learned. I personally made loads of mistakes when I first started out because I didn't have people like Andy who'd already done, what he's done, with him and the team. So, there is lots of advice and really helpful and friendly people out there. So if you are struggling, then just reach out for sure. Conscious that we're kind of coming up for time now. I don't really want to end it just yet. There are actually a couple of questions from the audience, and I guess one of them is, and you kind of referenced it a little bit, but is there anything that you would do differently next time? You mentioned that when you were started, if you were to start out again, what is it that you would really have done differently, if anything? And does that advice differ now when you're talking about those smaller businesses? Because as you say, in an organization the size of Lloyds Banking Group, we're talking tens of thousands of employees. It's very easy to cherry pick Dave from this area and Susan from this area. It's less of a, it's like more of a challenge, shall we say, in slightly smaller organizations. So would you do anything differently in Lloyds? And if I plonked you tomorrow in an organization of 1,000 FTE, 1,000 people, was there anything that you'd do differently in that scenario?
Yeah, so in Lloyds, this might sound trite, but I probably wouldn't do anything differently. I think the clarity on the 4 things that we were trying to launch worked really well, and where the market was in start of 2017, I think we did all right in terms of building that capability out. And when I see it now with the scale it's got now, I probably wouldn't change anything. But if I was either in Lloyds or in 1,000 FTE startup now, or starting on the journey now, I would look at lots of the different offerings that are in the marketplace that weren't out there now. So whether that's a a scale package that says here are the 4 capabilities or 5 capabilities that we can help you with, and it's nicely packaged, and we'll come in and we'll launch it with you and hand it. Then some of those are great, and they have operating model reviews in there, they have technology reviews in there, and I think, wow, that's a nice parceled way to start out and develop what you're doing. The other thing is be very, very clear on what you want to achieve. So if you're in a 1,000-person business, is it end-to-end process time you're trying to drop? Is it, have you got casework that needs pulling together? Have you got more chats with customers you want to solve? And then go out and go to that community, see who's doing what's available, and then build for the scale you want to be now and the scale you want to be in 3 to 5 years' time. Because the solutions, once you're with them, as I said earlier, once you're with that solution, it's hard to change out of them. So get it right first time. But there are so many offers in the market that a bit of help on where to focus on the right offer is always right, and get the right scale.
Excellent. Now we have a couple of further questions. So thank you, audience. First one is, has there been any impact on Charlie Nunn's change agenda on the automation roadmap? And maybe explain who Charlie Nunn is, if for the wider audience.
Yeah. So Charlie's our new chief exec. He joined in August, and we've had a number of changes in the group because we've got a new chief financial officer as well. So and there's a number of changes happening now. Have I seen anything major at the moment? No, we're just coming into the period of time where there'll be some announcements, I suspect, in the new year as we come to our financial. And what I would say is he is passionate about doing the right things for customers and colleagues and how you use automation. What I think is refreshingly good is we've also got a new chief operating officer, and they understand technology and automation very, very well. So, you sit in a session with them, and it's not just about, what you're doing on journey remapping. It's what infrastructure are we sat on? What solution are we using? How's that driving efficiency? All of those kind of good questions. So I've probably seen a step up in knowledge of how automation can be used and understanding how it fits in with the strategy. So I think the next period of time will be really exciting for what we've already built and developed, and I think there'll be a lot of support for it.
That you cannot underestimate how important it is to be able to have those conversations, and not the ones that we would have been used to originally, which is, it's not a physical robot, it's not going to go rogue. This is now about, what are you using? Because I know different solutions, what value are we getting from those solutions? Like, that is a completely different ballgame at those senior levels. So it's great not only to see the work that you've done, but now, if you think about the senior execs across the organization, they understand the technology and also what it can, and to some degree what it shouldn't be used for, which is great. That maturity of understanding is not to be scoffed at, definitely. There is one final question. I am conscious of time. I do want to give people 5 minutes before their next meeting. So last one here is around digital products. And do you exclusively have an internal build first stance?
So my simple answer is no, we don't. And it's horses for courses. In terms of, I've said that a number of times, so I need to think something else. So no, it isn't a internal build first stance. It's what is the solution we want to create, the best product, and we do a review of the market, as we did with finding solutions for RPA and who we went into on powering our virtual chatbots. So no, there isn't. It's just what fits and what the best approach is.
Yeah, and just to build on that, a lot of the problems that you're trying to solve, someone's kind of already solved them. And can you build? Probably. Could you maybe build cheaper? Debatable. But then you have the maintenance. You then have to continue to evolve that product. And it's just a big undertaking, right? It feels like it might be the right thing to do, but in this, and I say this quite often, in this wonderful world of AI and automation, it is so difficult to remain current. even as a vendor, as a supplier. So, to have that on your shoulders as an internal capability as well, while delivering, continued value, I think just makes it really, really difficult.
Yeah,
so, great questions. I'm sure there are many, many more. I do want to wrap up the session though. I don't really want to, but I do want to be mindful of everyone's time. Andy, I know me and you could chat for hours about all of this stuff. Your insights, even to myself, right? I've been doing this over a decade now. I still learn every time I speak with you, and I'm still, really impressed. I know I've mentioned this to you many times with the work that you and the team have managed to deliver at LBG. So amazing to have you on today's webinar. I'm sure the audience have found huge value. And for those who are interested in learning more, in reference visits, then both Andy and I are available on LinkedIn. I know Andy's profile here. You can't miss him. That is what his profile looks like. He will very much be at the top of the table if you type in Andy Shapcott. So thank you, Andy. Appreciate the time. Appreciate your honesty throughout, and obviously appreciate the work that you have done that is so interesting to talk about. So thank you, Andy.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
And thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Go have those comfort breaks, get your next drink ready for your next meeting, and feel free to reach out if you've got any other questions. Thank you.